Hi, everyone. I'm Tasha Peters, aesthetic business coach and founder of Tasha Talks Aesthetics. I help aesthetic providers like you launch, grow, and scale profitable, compliant, and impactful businesses. Today's session is designed to give you some clarity, confidence, and a roadmap to turn your dream of owning a med spa into a reality. I'm really excited to have Nurse Marisa with us today. Marisa is an aesthetic nurse, also an educator, and a clinical expert. She's got tons of real world experience and also the founder of Skin of Color Aesthetics. And she's also a laser expert. So, we are excited to answer some of the top questions that we hear from practitioners all over the country when they're thinking about opening up their own practice. So we hope you enjoy it and know that this is part one, and we will have multiple sessions after. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to be chatting with Nurse Marisa, and we are going to be covering some of the top questions that we receive from aesthetic practitioners when they are deciding to go out on their own.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to start with a question that I hear a lot. Um, I think there are a lot of options when it comes to training now, and folks want to invest in the right training. So, what should they look for when looking for a high quality training course?
Right. Yeah, that question comes up a lot. I would say that there's a lot of different options, and it's really overwhelming to a brand new med spa owner or even somebody that's working for a clinic that might have to go elsewhere to get training if they're not getting training in house. So I would say there's three different options. So there's in services that you get from the actual company. So Galderma, Allergan, they will bring in a trainer. Usually should be a nurse or a PA or something like that. It should not be just a business rep that's training you. And you do an in service that's paid for by the company. And whether or not you can get a training from the company kind of just depends on the budget for that quarter. So if you're asking your rep for a training and it's at the end of a quarter, they're most likely going to say that you have to wait till the following quarter. Now, you and I both know that the relationship with your rep also has a lot to do with them bringing in product, bringing in training product. So that does play a role in getting those free training vials or free training fillers. So in services usually cover on label areas. So keep that in mind if you're wanting to learn off label. So I would look up what the on label and off label areas are. For example, fillers. If you want to learn tear troughs, not every filler is going to be on label for tear troughs. So you want to look at that. You can sometimes ask the trainer for advice for off label, but sometimes they'll just say, well, don't record this, don't post it. So sometimes they will give you some tips, but they're not supposed to show you off label areas. So that's one way you can get trained. Another way is to go to a group class. So you can go to if you just do a Google search for group classes for injectables or group classes for Botox. And there's training companies that go across the country. They have different classes in different cities. But keep in mind, sometimes you don't know the class size. Sometimes you don't know who your trainer is going to be. And you don't know how many models, and you don't know what the models look like. So you have no control over the model. Sometimes they'll let you bring a model just depending on what class it is. But the feedback that I've received, and one of the first courses that I took were one of these large training courses where it was a group class. I flew all the way to Arizona from Southern California, and there were about 6 students in my little group. But then there was a huge class that we started the morning with, which was probably I must have been about 80 people. So it's a lot of, we don't know how many people are going to show up. We don't know the group size. So you want to look for a small group size. So the classes that I usually put on, I don't like more than 3 injectors in the same class because then you're going to get less hands-on. So the more injectors you have in that group, the less hands-on you're going to get. And I also make sure if I'm doing a group class that the models are perfect candidates for the treatment. So the last thing you want is for you to sign up for a group class. You have no control over the models and you want to learn lips and the model has so much migration and lumps and bumps. They actually need dissolving first. You're not going to learn on a patient that is not a candidate for lip filler or needs dissolving. So that would be, they have a small group ratio and that you know just the history behind the trainer too. The trainer needs to be qualified, of course. And then the third option is to bring in a private trainer. So that would be usually referral based. You can ask around to your colleagues. I can come and do private trainings in the Southern California area, but that is customized based on what you want to learn. So if you just have a group class, they may just be going over lips and nasolabial folds and marionette lines, but maybe you just don't want to learn nasolabial folds. Maybe you're good with that, but you just want to focus on lips. A private trainer can just kind of focus on one specific or a couple specific areas that you may need more training on. So they customize the training based on your needs. It's just you and the trainer. I usually like to do 2-to-1 ratio for those private trainings. And it's very intimate. You learn a lot in a private training. Is that I would say is the most beneficial. That one is, I think, the best investment for a new injector or someone that wants to advance their skills is to have a private trainer come in. Now, the only caveat is you have to have an established practice and you have to have accounts open and you have to have the training product. So I get a lot of questions about I want to do a private training, but I don't have a clinic yet, or I'm still looking for work. Well, then the best option would be for you to go to a group class and get a certificate of completion and get some knowledge and get a little hands on. And then once you establish your practice, then you can bring in a private trainer.
Yeah, that's really good to know. So how would a practitioner prepare for a private session with you?
So, the main thing is they need to have all of their compliance. They need to have their insurance. They need to have a medical director.
Mm,
They need to make sure that they have accounts open. So, some of the trainings that I've done is there was one in particular. We had a date set up. It was like 3 months in advance, and they could not get a hold of their reps to open their accounts.
oh,
So we had to delay the training because it does take time. There's a clinic that I'm mentoring right now, and they want to start like ASAP. They want to open within a month. They don't have any accounts open, and I'm like, hold on a second. You first need to first get an attorney, get all your compliance, and make sure that's all okay, and then you can start opening your accounts. Ask the reps for a training product, and then we can book a training once you have the training product. Now, a little thing about the training product, and you could probably speak on this about how much product the companies are willing to give practice, but I will say kind of depends on how much you're ordering. I will say based on my experience when I'm helping a practice with a private training, usually the reps are welcome, or they're more than like or more than helpful to give you training product because they want you to use their products. So usually there's not any barriers to getting that training product. Now there have been reps that have wanted to talk with me that want to know my experience, and that's perfectly fine. I'm an open book. You can call me all you want, text me, and get to know me if you're not sure who the trainer is. But I would say that not some reps will give you like a couple vials, some will be very generous. So you kind of just have to ask around. Do you have any input on that or any advice for?
yeah, I would say like the sooner you ask them, the better. So that way, they are prepared or can potentially, like if they're at the end of like their evaluation product allocation, because typically they have an allocation per quarter per year. They may ask you to, okay, can you hold off till next quarter? And then I will be able to assist you with like full facial correction, right? Versus just maybe focusing on lower face or upper face. So
Right.
it's really important to have that good relationship with your rep.
Mhm.
Also be prepared to share with them like what the goals are of the training, right? What are you looking to improve? How are you planning to implement that throughout your practice?
Right.
Because they, like you said, they will be quote unquote like a partner with you on their specific portfolio,
Right.
right? So I think the more information you give them, I would even go as far as like sending them Marissa's information, as you're introducing the idea to them.
Right.
Um, but it's, a great way to learn without having to, add the additional expense of the product, right? I think it's important that the investment goes into the actual training.
Right.
And it sounds to me, and like over the years, like we've learned this, it's the most ideal way to learn because every other option, it's more of like almost like introductory,
Mhm.
right? If you're not getting like enough hands-on, um, how do you then the next day at work go and start practicing everything you just learned? Like it just feels like there's such a gap.
Yeah.
Um, so let's say I'm with an established practice and I want to come train with you or have you come in to my location and train. How do we best prepare for that day? Right. And I guess let me backtrack. So models is always like a hot topic, right?
Right.
Like how do we find models? What are we looking for? So I guess like talk me through preparing for you to come in that day to train two of my injectors and just like to make the most efficient or make most of like the time that
Right.
we have with you that day. Cause like you said, it'd be horrible if we had somebody coming in and we're doing a lip training and they don't need their lips done.
Well, I approve all of the models. So if there's a private training, I have them send me all of the models, make sure that the patient intakes all filled out, any medical contraindications, they're automatically out. I always recommend for models that you are asking models to be able to use their pictures for marketing. If you're giving away the treatment for free or deeply discounted, you should be asking if you can be using their before and afters for, their social media. That's important. But I would say to best prepare, I have online didactic courses, and the best type of trainer is somebody that can give you material to study prior. So that way, when you are in the clinic, ready for hands on, you've got your model set up, All of the other stuff, the didactic, the stuff that you can learn online is all done prior to. And I do that for my laser trainings as well. So that's the best way for you to learn and maximize your hands-on time is to be given the didactic materials prior to. So I ask the trainer, that is something that I make sure to send prior, and I give him like at least 2 weeks to go over the material. But not every trainer has that. Sometimes it's like proprietary. Sometimes they just don't have, thorough enough material. And then they'll spend maybe like an hour doing didactic when that can just be done online. Nowadays, everything can be found online, Google Slides, PowerPoint, videos, so that would be the best way to prepare. And I would say too, setting up enough time. So one thing that I see a lot with the trainings is that I see this a lot with laser trainings actually. And let's say we have a 6 to 8 hour training booked. I will see the offices book patients in between. They're like, sorry, I got to step away to see a patient. Don't do that. So make sure it's like set aside, the day's blocked. I would also say that um, they don't have the time enough, they don't set aside enough time for it. There's not enough staff members. So let's say that they have 4 staff members for laser training, and they're only booking the training on a day that there's 2 of them in the practice. So schedule it far ahead. I know you want to like get going with the training and you want to start implementing the services right away, but you need all of your staff to be trained. So find a day farther ahead in advance when everybody's available, when maybe they have more time on their schedule. I would also say too, I usually require a 6 hour minimum training, but there's been some offices where I go in and they're like, well, okay, well, we're done. We only had 2 models lined up, and they just want to get back to patients, because if they don't see patients, that's lost income and lost revenue. But you have to remember that this is an investment. We want to maximize the training hours. So I see that a lot with, honestly, sometimes the plastic surgeons and the dermatologist's office, because they are like booked back to back. They're very busy. I see this a lot actually in Beverly Hills. Believe it or not, when they are just they're very busy. They have like, their books are booked out for weeks, and they're just not setting aside enough time on the schedule for a training. So really important to maximize that time. Usually by the 6 hour, we're like seeing double and our eyes are going cross-eyed. Everybody's tired. 8 hours is a little long, especially for injectables. 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours tends to be the sweet spot for training.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is priority. That's like one of the best ways to get ready. Is a priority.
Yeah.
From start to finish.
And also figuring out what you want to learn first. So there's actually a practice that I'm mentoring right now, and they want to learn everything right away. They want to learn PDO threads and lasers and radius and injectables, full face balancing. And I'm like, hold on a second, let's start with one thing, one priority, because the worst thing, not one of the worst things, but one thing that I do see that is a big mistake when you're trying to book a training is you want to learn a lot in one day. You're going to learn more. Let's say if you have 3 lip filler models and that repetitive training versus I got 1 lip model and then I got 1 full face balancing and then I have a Sculptra and then I want to learn PRP. So I've made that mistake as a trainer. Is like, yeah, we can fit it all in. Let's maybe do an 8 hour training. And of course, by that 6 hour, everybody's exhausted. I'm exhausted. My feet hurt. And then they don't retain any of that information because we've only done at least 1 model for each particular treatment. So prioritize what you want to learn. Start slow and steady. I would rather be good at 3 things than be just okay with maybe 10 things or 10 treatments.
Right. And talking to the new aesthetic providers or those that are trying to get into the field. When I first started my journey in aesthetics a long time ago, we started with lasers and skincare, and then neurotoxins, and then filler, and then eventually when biostimulants came out later on, we would train on that. So in today's industry or day of aesthetics, what do you suggest somebody brand new agreeing to this? How do they start their education journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it just sort of depends on if they find a job where that's willing to train them, which is like a needle in a haystack. If you get hired and they're willing to train you with like no fees, maybe they'll have you sign a contract, but you're not paying anything out of pocket. Like go buy a lottery ticket, because that is like you got such good luck.
Right.
So yes, I started that way too. I started at a laser clinic. It was a fast-paced laser hair removal. It actually wasn't laser, it was IPL removal. And we were just booked back to back with patients. Granted, it was a lot of Groupon type patients, which is controversial in its own, whether or not you bring patients in with Groupon, but we were busy. And then I learned injectables after that. So things have kind of turned in the industry now where the primary focus is injectables. So I would say if you can't find a job as a new aesthetic nurse or aspiring aesthetic nurse, first of all, don't give up on your job search. It took me about a year to find my first job. I was working in home health. It took me about a year. I was getting interviews, but there just wasn't anyone that was willing to give me a chance except just she's my mentor. Her name's Patty Rappa. She actually gave me my first opportunity and has helped me actually grow my training company as well. So she took a chance, and she took a chance on me, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I didn't give up. I didn't give up. So I would say if you can't find a job that's willing to train you, your second option is to work with someone like yourself to start building a med spa. And you certainly can invest in your training, and you can kind of speak on this because this isn't the route that I took, but a lot of aspiring aesthetic nurses are. You can certainly be profitable and successful as a brand new aesthetic nurse med spa owner, but it will take time, and you have to invest in a business consultant like Natasha. You have to, because you will. I meet practices all the time that have done things backwards. They're buying too many devices. They're starting too big. They're not starting small. And they are running into problems where they're bleeding money. They have unhappy patients because they haven't invested in their training, and they're not getting the right business advice as far as the marketing. So it can happen. I've seen it happen. And you can be successful if you don't have any experience, but the community, having someone like Natasha, having a mentor is essential to your success.
Yeah, it's a whole lot to learn all at once, and I do encourage anyone that I speak to that kind of falls into that bucket where I don't have experience. I've been a nurse for 10 years and I really want to get into aesthetics. I haven't been able to find a job, so I'm just going to open up my own practice.
Mhm.
Hey, kudos to you, right? But I asked them to take a step back and just kind of learn a little bit more about the business side in that process. You're learning how to become an entrepreneur, right? How to manage and operate a business. And then you also have a brand new clinical skill set to learn. And I think the third piece that I like to mention to folks is the patient. The patient is way different than what you're accustomed to. The language is different. These are elective procedures. So it's a whirlwind of different skills that you have to be really good at before you're successful.
Yeah.
So the more help you have in the areas where you don't have experience, the better. Um, so I guess that kind of leads me to one of my questions that I get a lot. People always ask, like, what should I offer first? Right?
Mhm.
What should I,
Yeah.
and if you have experience in aesthetics, my first go-to is like, what are you best at? What do you enjoy doing? Right? That's my first question. Like, let's start there. And then we can talk about finances after. But there's no need to, do what your competitor down the street is doing. So you kind of have to define, right? Like what it is that you enjoy doing the most. If you are brand new to aesthetics, I generally recommend starting with neurotoxins and skin treatments, not necessarily a device right away, but something like microneedling, chemical peels, just so that you're getting an introduction to the skin and you're able to work on, texture and pigment. Is it okay to start with a device right away? Absolutely. But just know that you're going to be spending a lot of time training
Mhm.
on the
Yes.
services. And it just really matters how much time you have.
Right.
And if you're not doing this full time, which is a lot of cases, um, then it almost makes it feel like impossible to accomplish because
Yeah.
there's like not enough time in the day.
Yeah. You mentioned full time. So what is your advice to med spas that maybe they're still working at the hospital, they're still working bedside, they want to start a med spa? I just spoke with the aspiring med spa owner yesterday. He's afraid to leave the hospital because of the benefits. So what do you tell your clients about that?
Yeah.
Because it's very scary. It's very, to them, it's taking a risk.
Yeah, it's a huge risk and it's not for everyone. So I kind of help them like sort that out. Is this for you? Like this is like the realistic lifestyle of an aesthetic practice owner. Um, you will have to make tough decisions, right? Unless you have the funds to hire like an office manager that can handle a lot of the admin day-to-day things for you, which is not usually the case. Um, I ask them to choose. You've got to make a choice.
Yeah.
How do you want to spend your time? What would you like to do with your life? Otherwise, know that the bigger risk is biting off more than you can chew. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Um,
I would also say too that it's hard to build clientele and get trained and be really good. Like I mentioned, being good, really good at three things versus just offering 10 different things and being okay. It's hard
yes.
to build that skill set, because the way that I learned by being at a dermatology office that was like, I was there 5 days a week and we were booked busy, busy, lots of devices, lots of procedures. And it was just that repetitive, just with anything that we learn,
Mhm.
that repetition, seeing patients come back that either didn't have a good result, had a great result. And then you're like, okay, I got this. Like, I get it. I got my settings right with my lasers. I know how to properly assess my injectable patients, and I'm giving them a good treatment plan. So that's when it starts to click. But the longer it takes you to get there, if you are just doing 1 or 2 days or even just evenings at the med spa, it's just going to be harder for you to grow. Now, just personal story, I was working at a home health agency prior to aesthetics. I did that for 2 years before I got hired at a med spa. And I was making 6 figures as like a new nurse. 2 years in, I was getting paid really, really well with benefits. I had a newborn baby, I had a 2-year-old, and it was great. It was very tiring working home health. But then I got offered a full-time job at a derm office, but there was no benefits. I think at the time, I think there was a probationary period. So I had to lose my benefits and there was a pay cut. So that's
Mm,
also something that we see, right? With you leaving the hospital to
right.
aesthetics, is there's going to be a pay cut, especially if you're a med spa owner. You're not going to, I don't know how long it takes you to get out of the red and for you to actually start paying yourself, but I'm sure you can speak on that because I don't know, but I would assume that it's not right away. Patients aren't going to just be coming through the doors. So I took the leap, took the full-time job, took a pay cut. It was hard for the first few years, but it paid off. It paid off.
Yeah, and that you probably made up the difference in what you were able to learn there versus having to go out and, invest in all of that training.
Yeah, and that was the difference with that particular office, is that they invested in my training. They took us to conferences, they paid for in services for us. I didn't pay a dime out of my pocket for any of the training that they. So maybe I should have bought a lottery ticket. Knowing what I know now, I mean, gosh, but I guess you don't really see that anymore. To be honest with you, it's really hard because I do think the industry's changed.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people want to open up their own practice. I don't see a lot of offices offering training basically for free or without a contract. I didn't have a contract in place. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, there's usually a contract in place.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes, additional training and more advanced training is earned. Sometimes it's a part of like the incentive or bonus structure.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I wanted to mention too about, and I'm not here, I don't want to discourage anybody
Yeah.
that is new to aesthetics that wants to open up their own practice. My passion and what I do is like giving you like the real raw facts,
Yeah.
and then you make the best decision for yourself. But one thing that you will not have are your colleagues. And as you know, like there's nothing better than being able to just stick your head out the door and like, hey, Susie, can you come look at these lips real quick? And I think it's just like vital to the start of your career to have like a tribe of injectors or aesthetic practitioners that have more experience than you that can help you
Yeah.
through that process. And then what I hear from 99.9% of my clients who are solo providers out on their own, they're lonely.
Yeah.
They miss the camaraderie, right? And it's not to say that they can't create it, because we do. We get together, we have dinners, we have, group trainings. But if you don't have that foundation of working with other clinicians and then you just jump into going out on your own right away, just know that it's going to be that much more intense for you.
Right.
You know, you're going to it, like you mentioned earlier, like that repetitiveness helps you get to that competency level,
Right.
right? And so when you're on your own, like just expect to have lots of self-doubt, more than the aesthetic practitioner that has experience in aesthetics that goes out on her own will deal with, right? Because they've already like overcome those obstacles.
Yeah.
So just, some things to think about, because we know how tough the industry is now. I truly believe that, you know, and I hate to say this, but we've seen this before in our industry. I want to say like around 2007-ish, because like 2005, med spas were booming. All the ER docs were opening up a med spa. They were like on every corner. It was so competitive. Everybody was just underpricing each other. And then a lot of them closed down within a few years, right? So, um, I expect to see something similar happen in the market. And then, we are probably going to see more of an influx of opportunities at like the derm offices or at the plastic surgery offices, because the demand will be higher for them. And then, for my clients who are established in the field and have been open, we just focus on differentiating yourself from the competition, not worrying about it. Like what's unique and special about you? Because no matter what happens, you'll still be here.
Right. Yeah. One of the things Patty always mentioned. So Patty Rappa, I mentioned, is my mentor. She has a med spa in Santa Monica on Montana Avenue, and there are, I think, just within like a couple miles radius, like 10 med spas, including plastic surgeons and derm. And she always would say that it's about the patient experience that's going to set you apart. It's not so much that you have $10 per unit of whatever product. for injectables or for neurotoxin, but it's also, how are they greeted? Are you offering them a beverage? Are you not being salesy and not being pushy? Are you creating a nice environment for them that they come in and they just feel relaxed the second that they go in? So setting yourself apart. I always say too, I was actually talking to a med spa about this too, is about you don't have to be you don't have to be like your competitors. Like you mentioned earlier, is you have to figure out what you like and what are your you might not know what you like until you start doing it. But what feels good to you and what have you tried as a maybe as a patient? Do you like massages? Do you like facials? That should be part of your business. Bring in an esthetician or a masseuse. Do you want it to be more of a spa experience, right? Versus just very medical and very sterile. So that's something that you should figure out. I would also say that you don't necessarily, in my opinion, is you don't necessarily have to start with injectables. I don't think that you necessarily have to. One of the reasons being it's very competitive, and I don't believe it's a big money maker unless you're doing a lot of units and unless you're doing full face rejuvenation with neurotoxins, because a lot of practices feel like they have to lower their price per unit and then they're just not making any money when they look at their overhead, they look at their insurance, how much they're training. So you may not need to do injectables. Maybe you can just do chemical peels, bring in an esthetician, do facials, or learn to do facials. Nurses can also, go and get their esthetician license, and you can do both. I would
Mhm.
also say that, you can do a lot with microneedling. Microneedling is a high return on investment with the pens and how much you can actually make off a microneedling treatment, and packages also make a difference. You mentioned also too, there's so much to talk about. You mentioned too the community, right? And being lonely. One of the things I mention all the time to new aesthetic nurses or PAs is go to conferences, network, reach out to people. There was a girl that I talked to just yesterday that said, I've been following you for a long time. You're in my city, but I was just too intimidated to message you or to ask you for help. And I've connected her with a bunch of different people already. And we finally got to talk on the phone. And she's just like, gosh, I wish I would have reached out to you sooner because I've done things wrong with my business. I did things backwards.
Mm.
So don't hesitate to reach out to people that you may think your ethics align and you think that they might be a good resource for you. I'm an open book. You can message me anytime you want and I will lead you to the right people. I would say that the more connections that you make, the more networking you do, the more successful you're going to be, even as a solo med spa owner. I go to conferences, meet people. I'm actually an introvert by nature, but I get extroverted at conferences. I'm a little bit, I love being, I present on stage. I'm going up to people, meeting people. I love the community. I love our industry. It's such a great space to be in. And when you meet the right people that have your back, that are supportive, it feels really good to be here. And not everybody is like that though, too. You'll find that there's a lot of copycats, there's a lot of people that are gatekeepers, there's those who are very competitive. And you can kind of like feed that out and kind of get the vibe from someone like that right away. Because it is competitive and some people have that mindset, but that's not everybody. So
Right.
the more you have in your community, the best. I wanted to ask you, Natasha. So talking about just new med spa owners, how much money they should actually put towards the spa, or how much does it cost to actually start a med spa? If you can kind of talk.
Mhm. Yeah, I do get that question a lot.
Mhm.
And my answer is like it's a pretty wide range. So some of the questions that I first ask is, how much experience or how much training have you had? That way we can factor that into your launch budget. And a lot of people don't expect that. They think that, okay, once I, start my business and open up my Allergan account, I'm just going to get all tons of free training. And it's not the case. My second question is like, what do you envision your practice to look like? What size are you looking for? How many treatment rooms? And then how many staff members do you envision? Sometimes there is very, very small budgets and it is being bootstrapped by the practitioner. And then other times there are family members who are becoming investors and or business loans taking out. So it really kind of depends on their financial resources, and then like what's the game plan? What do you envision here? Are we going to be a solo practitioner? Are you going to have a 3,000 square foot medical spa with devices? Like what do you plan on offering? So I would say on the lowest side, the lowest end, um, it, with no experience in aesthetics, and this would be someone who is going to be starting in like a solo suite versus like a brick and mortar. Your first year, I would say, expect to spend at least $50,000 on your launch and your training. And your launch will include like your treatment table, right? All of your ancillary supplies, your healthcare attorney, which is really important to establish that and get your policies and procedures, your collaboration agreements, and your business entity all set up through them. And then after that would be like your inventory supplies, your decor, and then your medical director. Business and malpractice insurance as well. We can't forget about that. But if you're going to start out small without a device and maybe just like microneedling and chemical peels or microneedling and neurotoxins, I think $50,000 is a really safe number. And then it just goes up from there, right? If you're okay with building out a space, again, it goes back to, okay, well, what square footage are you looking for? I've seen people spend anywhere from 50 to over $1 million before they even get up and running.
Yeah.
So it varies, but there is a way to do this that's like considered more of a lean startup.
Mhm.
You mentioned earlier that you see clients kind of get themselves into some trouble because they thought they had to have all this equipment, and it's just like not necessary. So it is important to speak with a consultant prior to opening, so that way you have an understanding of what you're getting into.
Right.
Most people don't even know how much a vial of Botox or Dysport costs. Right. So it's really important to have a business plan in place, and a deep understanding of like all of the intricate inside details,
Right.
because otherwise you're going in blind.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't sign up to buy a car if you didn't know how much it costs, right?
Right.
So it's like the same thing here. You've got to do as much research as you can.
Right.
Um, I don't necessarily, I mean, we just talked about having your tribe and whatnot. But I do think it's important to work with somebody that has the business background when it comes to the business side of your med spa, because you will get advice from friends and not all of it is going to be accurate. I see that a lot as well. Oh, well, my friend has a med spa and her lawyer said this, or her, rep said that. And it's like, okay, so
I would say I see that on the clinical side too, where they get confused with just protocols and with injection techniques.
mhm,
They're so overwhelmed because one trainer does it this way, another trainer does it that way. There's no real set. It's not like the hospital where there's like a protocol for like a code blue, you
right,
know. So aesthetics, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So what I tell the offices that I'm training or those that I'm mentoring is that you have to figure out what makes sense to you and what works for you, and if it's giving your patients good results with minimal adverse effects. Because you're going to go to a training and they're going to do something completely different. I heard about this. Or they aspirate and she aspirates and he doesn't, and vice versa. So just figure out what makes sense to you. Where the clinical studies, does the clinical study actually prove or show that this technique is the best or the safest? So just kind of, I see that too, just on this side, on the clinical side, just, they get confused about, well, what's the best treatment or what's the best technique?
right.
So I wanted to ask you too. So you mentioned just about medical directorship. So what would you recommend? Because I get questions all the time about how do I find a medical director? I'm looking for a medical director.
Mhm.
And what I usually see is someone just like posting it on Facebook, or they have like an ad out on Indeed. How do you make sure that your medical director is vetted and that they are in at the right, it's the right time and they're the right person for a medical director?
Mhm, mhm. There are some companies out there that do help with a part of that process, and they work with collaborating physicians all over the country, that have experience in aesthetics, that could confidently sign off on your SOPs, and then also like be able to be that mentor that they're supposed to be on a clinical level in the event you need them.
Yeah.
Um, so unfortunately, we see a lot of people that have a friend who is an internist. And I understand that it seems like a quick and easy fix, so you can check that off your list and move on to the next thing. But it's vital to your career and your license that you work with a medical director that knows more than you do.
Yeah. That's
Okay. Now, there are a lot of advanced practitioners like yourself who you might be neck to neck with your medical director, right? But by law, we still have to have one. For those who are new to the space, I would definitely make the investment because you are going to spend a little bit more on a proper medical director. But, God forbid you were ever in court over something. I mean, it's really important that you bring on the right team for your practice.
Yeah, they shouldn't be somebody that they're kind of loaning their license for you to operate. Because if there were to be a complication or a vascular occlusion or a burn with a laser and it ever goes to court and your medical director didn't step in to help with the complication, or they weren't trained on any of the treatments, if they're
Right.
not taking classes, if they're not getting certification for or getting certificates of completion for their the training courses, then that's a big, the judge's not going to like that, and that's going to work against you if you're, if you have a patient that had a complication.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I know in some states too, malpractice insurance does also require like proof of certifications and the procedures that you'll be offering. So if you're offering them, then your medical director needs to also have the experience with those procedures.
Right.
Um, and it's also important that they're within driving distance, right? Or really quick flight. If they're across the country and you need their help, the last thing you want to do is send the patient to the ER, right? So it's really important that they're accessible. So I think some of the red flags, like you mentioned, like the lack of training on their end, lack of experience in the industry,
Mm.
and if they're priced really low,
Yeah.
that's actually not a good thing, and it's not going to benefit your business.
Right.
It can hurt you big time in the long run. So I also work with some doctors in Southern California. I know you're starting to work with some as well. So we're a resource for that as well. And also just like to give more advice and guidance around that and what that relationship should look like.
Yeah.
How often do you meet with them, and when do you call them versus calling Marisa, which is something I wanted to try to get to on this meeting or podcast. We're going to have a part two.
Well,
Um,
we need
your
to post
your mentorship program.
it. Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So my mentorship program was actually designed for those that are solo business owners, solo clinicians. I don't like to say injectors. We're not just injectors, but they're on their own. And just like the clients we've been talking about, those that are brand new to the aesthetic industry, or they've got their feet wet a little bit, they have a little bit of experience, but they want to branch out on their own and they just don't have that day-to-day clinical support. The medical director is not in-house and possibly not knowledgeable enough on day-to-day questions. So I'm there virtually where, they just call me, text me, whatever they want to do, voice note me. Hey, I have a question about this patient. Or I don't like to handicap them and to give them the treatment plan first. So if they send me a picture of a patient and like, what do you think she needs or he needs? I'll say, you tell me first and then I'll correct you. So that way you're not handicapped at the end. Eventually you're not going to need me anymore. That's the goal, is to get you independent and to get you confident with your skills. But in the meantime, if you've taken a few courses and still things aren't completely clear to you, that's what my mentorship is designed for. I also have over 500 files of a resource library that I've been collecting of class footage from my classes, footage from just videos that I've recorded that are on my YouTube channel, but longer videos on my mentorship. And it's journal articles that I've been collecting over 14 years. So instead of you like subscribing to a journal, you can just log on to my mentorship or the Google Drive and everything's on there for you. So it's actually like Patreon, but better, because you have me clinically there to help you, but then also the resource library of stuff that I put stuff out every week. So I'm actually in the process of putting together a membership, not a mentorship, but a membership with access to just the library. If maybe you don't need my day-to-day clinical support yet, it might be over your budget at the moment, but it's going to be $149. And it's so just like Patreon, but it's through my website, nursemarissa.com. And the membership, you just log on and it's going to be updates, and it's going to be just good stuff as far as like injectables, advanced lower face. I have a really good one on using SkinVive off label, the product from Juvederm. I have a good one on just IPL training, intense pulse light, just very basic fundamentals. So all of that's in the process of being put up on my website. But yeah, I actually put this together because in the Facebook groups, I would see new clinicians ask questions all the time, and actually DM'd one of them and I said, hey, like, she was actually very sweet. And I DM'd her and I said, I noticed that you're asking a lot of questions in the Facebook group. I just wanted to let you know that I offer mentoring and a virtual training. We can talk about all the questions that you may have. Just ask me anything. And she was like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you so much. Like, this is what I need. And she's actually been on my mentorship program for 3 years. I can't get rid of her. I told her that I think you're good. Like you're skilled. Like you're second guessing yourself. You're knowledgeable, but she likes to have me as just that cushion if there were to be a question, a complication with the patient. And her actually medical director is a plastic surgeon. He's just not in house and he's very busy, but she likes my accessibility, that I can get back to her pretty quickly. Um, and I think that, she trusts me and she trusts my judgment. Not that she doesn't trust her medical director, but I think that, we've been working together for a long time, but she's just like, yeah, I still like want to keep on the mentorship because I like how, you make me think and you help me through difficult patients. and she's on her own. She's in
Mm,
the process of hiring another nurse, but she's on her own and she wants to keep growing. But I did tell her the other day, I'm like, I think you're good. I think you're okay to just fly on your own. But
yeah,
yeah, but that's the mentorship. And that's just sort of my goal is to be there virtually for them.
it's incredible. And I mean, I have a lot of clients that are work with you on your mentorship, and what I hear is that it gives them peace of mind. It's like the some of the best money that they spend on their business.
Yeah.
Highly
Well,
recommend it.
we've worked together on with a few clients, and I mean, I would say the same for you. Is that that's the best investment that they could make is to invest in a business consultant because we don't go to school to be business owners. Nursing school doesn't. They miss that part. Also, medical or MDs and doctors of medicine, they don't go to school to be business owners. So having
Right.
someone like Natasha is definitely a must, like I mentioned before. But yeah, you've helped a lot of, like, I'll say, I don't know that question. That would be a Natasha question because I'm not a business owner. I have my training company, but I've never been a med spa owner.
Right, right. It's a different beast
Mm-hmm.
owning a med spa.
Yeah, it sure is. And hopefully, everyone that's watching this, you got some great advice because this is all things that I think a lot of people wish they knew when they started. And if they can go back in time, they wish they would have got the advice that we're giving them. So hopefully this has helped some business
Yeah,
owners or aspiring business owners.
absolutely. And we have lots more to cover on our next episode. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we will leave our information for everyone so that you know how to get in contact with us. Thanks again, Marissa.
Next time, bye.
Bye.